This is Soul Night Live number 49. Today, my guest is Colin Bass. Thank you so much for dropping by today and chatting with us.
Okay.
So I was curious what you have been up to, just daily lately during this unusual time.
Well, I'm speaking to you from my studio where I have got a couple of different projects on the go. Also, I have other projects on the go. Like, for instance, we have a small farm here, and I've just come back from cleaning and saying good night to the donkeys.
Oh,
And
excellent.
this is a very invigorating process, and it's something that everybody should do. It brings you it really grounds you,
Yeah, I can imagine.
puts you in touch with nature.
Yeah.
So, and the rest of the time, we've been very busy this year because mainly because my wife and I we also run a Whole Food store in the nearest town,
Oh, excellent.
about a couple of miles away. And it needs running. We have people working for us, but it needs running, and that is something else to do. So yeah, there's plenty of things to do.
Well, that's good. It's good that you've got options because not everybody does, or some people just
Well,
feel
it's
like
true. I mean, the point is we've been locked down in this country. I'm in Wales, and we've just come out of a lockdown. And funnily enough, England, our neighbours, have just gone into one.
yeah,
So it's quite confusing, really. But yeah, but we've been busy all the year. Throughout all the lockdowns, life has just been continuing because we're the whole food shop sells food, and people got to eat. You can lock people down, but they got to eat, and more
very
people
true.
are sort of wanting to think about a healthier lifestyle, healthier way of eating, and which we can provide with lots of fresh veg and
Bring it
organic
on. Yeah,
organic stuff.
yeah, that's the best stuff.
That's why I'm looking so great.
You look awesome. Have
Thank
you
you.
had anybody approach you about COVID related cures? I have a friend here that runs a health food store, and he seems like he's saved three or four lives already.
Oh yeah, okay. I'd like to know how, but
Well, I'll send you a list.
what
I'll send you
what
a list of his favorite remedies.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think it's I don't think that you can anybody at this point can prescribe a remedy. Even us in our shop, we can't but we what we can do is help people to bolster up their immune system so that they
pretty much
actually
that's it. I know
are
zinc.
better equipped to handle it if they contract it.
Yeah, I know zinc is one of the biggies. I have
Zinc and selenium. If you have zinc, it's good to take selenium as well because the selenium works with the zinc, and selenium helps to transport the zinc into
okay,
the
and
system.
it kind of bolsters your immune system in the process
Yeah,
between
zinc,
the two of them.
selenium, vitamin C, and there have been lots of studies, and nobody says much about it because obviously everybody's focused on a vaccine, but uh, there's been a lot of studies showing a great success with vitamin D.
That's good to know. It's good to know.
So.
Well, I mean, I think everybody's reticent to go, oh, this is the panacea we've all been after. But
Oh, because there isn't one. All
yeah,
you can do is gird your loins,
yeah.
as they say,
So the best you can do is just kind of shoot in the dark and maybe get lucky. So
and be
apparently,
healthy.
some people have. So yeah, I
D-
just think
Don't eat so much junk food, basically.
exactly,
Yeah.
very true. Stay away from the sugar too. I think that's
Correct.
you know.
Hey, we're getting on just fine here,
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah,
Just
yeah. Then I take a swig of this, and you're like, Sean, what have we been talking
okay.
about? Come on,
Really.
man, put that out, throw that out. So I wanted to go back and kind of go through your musical journey as it was, and
Mm.
kind of go back to the early days. And I was curious what some of your earliest musical memories are. Like before you were old enough to buy a record, you just heard music around the home, or
Yes, yes, heard music around the home, I guess, but the first time that I really you know, my what I always think of as like the sort of the moment when I something happened was when my father brought home a second-hand record player with a changer record player, you know, Dansette. And he'd bought it from some people, and they just gave us a lot of '78 records, and with it. So, and that was the key point, I think, because and I would and what was, I think was important about it is that I would listen to anything. So I guess I was about 5 or 6, maybe about 5, and I was so there in this pile of records that I remember very well. There was Slim Whitman, Rosemary.
Oh, yes.
There were lovely song.
Yeah,
Still
yeah.
today,
He
it's
had quite a
fabulous.
voice, you know. He was quite the
Oh,
yodeler,
really? Yeah, yeah.
among other
Slim,
things.
very, very, very. He was very slim, and some light classical things, Fingal's Cave, Mendelssohn, and some light opera. Mario Lanza, who was an Italian tenor who was very popular in the 50s, and some. There was a famous English trumpet player called Eddie Calvert who had a couple of hits, you know, with some trumpet-related instrumentals, and they were all in this pile of records. So I would play them, and then one of those records was by Lonnie Donegan,
Oh, sure, the skiffle.
the skiffle stuff, and
Yeah,
that was Gambling Man, and then that was it. That was absolutely the clincher because I'd never heard anything quite so wild,
sure.
and I can recommend lots. I can recommend to anybody to go search for Lonnie Donegan, Gambling Man, and you hit like it's 2.5 minutes of really wild playing, and he had a great little combo. His brother was the guitarist, and it's just what it builds in intensity, and it's I played that over and over again and would mime to it with my tennis racket, you know, sort
Yeah.
of.
Now that predated the Beatles a little bit, didn't
Oh, listen, Sean, and everybody, if anybody's out there, I'm quite old. So actually, we're talking about 1956, 57. So it must have been 1956 or 57 that we got the record player. Because the next thing that happened was my brother brought home, he'd bought a '78 of Heartbreak Hotel, Elvis.
it? Oh, wow.
And now that, you know, there was Lonnie, that was great, you know, and then there was Elvis, you know, and I know that record totally by heart, you know, the guitar solo, Scotty Moore,
Oh, sure.
all that thing. And I wish I still had that '78 because it was a rare pressing. It had a turquoise label and it was his master's voice because it used to be on his master's voice. And then when it all became successful, they started putting it out on RCA Victor, and we had an original his master's voice '78 that would be worth at least 10 shillings by now, I would imagine.
Maybe
But
11.
anyway, so that's it. Lonnie and Elvis, really. Lonnie Donegan and Elvis. Those are my. That was what kick-started my
Did Elvis feel like
mania for music.
did Elvis feel like a big leap ahead from Lonnie at the time, or
No, it
more
was
the
all
same?
doing the same thing, actually. I
Yeah,
thought Lonnie was, you know, but the great thing about Lonnie was that he was ours.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, he was
Yeah.
English, he was
I
British.
think the big number that most Americans would know from him is one called the Rock Island Line.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I
Yeah,
remember singing that in grade school, among other oldies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Rock
Yeah,
Island Line is a mighty good road.
it's the way to ride.
It's the way to ride.
So if you're gonna, I almost remember it. Huh? Yeah, anyway, yes, yeah, the great one. All righty. Um, so you started on guitar and then you moved to bass a little bit later. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I started on tennis racket, as
Yeah,
John
as we
said,
all do.
and then all of a sudden the guitar appeared. I had a lot of trouble sort of playing because it was awful guitar, but
It's often the case with many of
almost
them.
put me off, you
Oh,
know.
me
But
too. I had one where the action was this high. It was a 12
yeah,
string,
yeah, yeah. That's
a
the one.
12 string acoustic, only like the
Oh,
hardest
12
thing to
string.
play.
Yeah,
And I just I was
Do you,
about 7, and I figured, oh, well, all guitars are this hard. I guess this just isn't for
yeah.
me. And then I got a hold of an electric around 12, and it was like, oh, wait, it doesn't have to hurt.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
maybe
right.
I'll try this again.
Okay. But of course, the more you play, the more it has to hurt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you
Got
kind
to
of
get
just have
those.
to
Got
play
to get
through
those
that,
fingers. Yeah.
build up those calluses and such. So, what was your first guitar?
But well, I didn't really start playing sort of, I don't know, properly when, because at my school, when I was in a band at school called The Reaction, um, I was the singer. I was the singer and maraca player, as you were in those days. This is the days of the Stones, not Fade Away and all
Sure.
that. And I only had one pair of maracas, and Mick had two.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, I did my best with my one pair of maracas, and tambourine, of course.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was coasting along, being a singer for a while, and I'm still in touch with some of the guys in the band there. In fact,
Oh, that's awesome.
all the guys in the band. In fact, yeah,
That's great.
it's really, and we're all quite old now. But it's then I sort of, then I got, I don't know, when I left school at an early age, I was in a job, and someone was selling a guitar, and I tell you what it was, and I wish I still had it. It was a Fender Mustang, short scale
Oh, very
Fender
nice.
Mustang.
Kind of
Oh,
surfy.
with a wangy, I mean, what a guitar that was. Actually, what happened was that I played with my first pro band called The Crisis with a K,
Yeah.
and
1968.
1968, and I'm still in touch with them today. In fact, we had a reunion about a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, Roger, the drummer, died earlier this year.
Oh, sorry.
Put paid to our post-COVID plans of getting together and recording down at Rockfield Studios,
Did you
because
play at your reunion?
yeah, around the dinner table, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, around the dinner table, we
Yeah.
were singing and trying to remember the old songs. But so, and then after that sort of dissipated, as these bands normally, I mean, that was the first band that I could say we went pro, and that is we all gave up our jobs. I gave up my job in the photographic darkroom, and we went professional. That means we had an agent who was getting us gigs in Scotland for £15, and we would drive up to Birmingham. We would drive all over the UK for next to nothing. I don't even know what we ate. It was extraordinary. But in those days, what was really great, because obviously nothing is happening these days, but later that all sort of went by the wayside. But in those days, you could get a cheap gig as a support band. Everybody had support bands.
Sure.
So we would go and play at maybe the Tin Hat Club in Kettering, sort of about 50 miles from London, and we'd be supporting the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Oh, sure.
And then we'd be supporting Brunel University. We supported the Nice.
Oh,
We
nice.
supported the Who at the Lyceum.
Oh,
Pink Floyd at the Imperial College. And that was, I think, one of Dave Gilmour's first gigs. And Van de Graaff Generator, I don't know. We played with them all. We never got as famous, but it's sort of we played with all those bands. The Move, and travelled all over the country to do it.
which
And
which of those did you like the best? Were you a fan of any of the modern rock bands, your contemporaries?
yeah, of course, because we were really a sort of a little rock, guitar, bass, singer, drums quartet.
Hmm.
So, and we modelled ourselves on the Who, and we were kind of veering between the Who and the Small Faces, and sort of like slightly poppy kind of things. Well, the point is, if you go, and also we had to learn a big repertoire. And I remember once we went on a tour in Scotland of army bases.
Fun.
And so for that tour, we learnt sort of lots of Stax records and Tamla Motown and stuff like that.
That's
And
great stuff.
fantastic, you
Yeah,
know. But that was really good education, actually, sort of,
sure.
because, you know, they said you've got to play, you know, Otis Redding and Tamla Motown, otherwise they'll throw bottles at you. So we went, okay,
But
okay, that's motivation enough.
sure. Yep.
And yeah, that's what we did. So yeah, and then when that band dissipated, what you I discovered by then that you to get jobs in the as a musician, you bought the Melody Maker, which was the weekly newspaper.
Yeah, kind of want
Yeah,
ads for musicians and
and at
music
the
news.
back was the want ads for
Yeah.
musicians. And so then I got a job with a band called the Velvet Opera, who had had some success, but then the lead singer Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera, but then he left, and so they had another singer, and the guitarist was carrying on, and funnily enough, we had two drummers in that band. I mean, one after the other.
Okay.
The first one was Mick Fincher, who was played with Kevin Ayers after that.
I know their name. Yeah. Okay.
And the second one was Tony Fernandez, who later played with Rick Wakeman,
Okay.
was Rick Wakeman's drummer. Well, yeah. So, yeah, interesting how these people were sort of coalescing around the London scene.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I got this job with the Velvet Opera as a bass player. So I traded in the Mustang for a Fender Precision.
Oh, really? So the
Yeah.
first bass you had was a really nice one. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wish I still had that Fender Precision.
How do you
But
feel about
yeah.
the precision versus the jazz? And which do you
Oh, I
prefer?
much prefer the Precision.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Any particular
yeah,
reason? Just tone
yeah,
wise?
because it's just a slightly wider neck, and I find it's yeah, it's a bit more funky to
Yeah.
me, you know, and that's kind of how I sort of then I blame it upon in the having in the crisis learnt all the Tamla Motown things and listening to the Stax stuff
Sure.
and then thinking, whoa, this is real bass playing, you know. And then so when I was starting to play bass, I would play along with that.
Hmm.
And so I've always sort of veered towards that side of it. And I think the precision is best for the funky stuff.
Okay. And what kind of
It's my
amp?
opinion.
Yeah. What kind of amp were you using at the
God, anything I could get hold of,
time?
really. I remember having a high watt. I had a high watt amp for a while. Because, you know, in those days you had to have a high with two big speaker cabinets and
Sure.
a big stack.
Absolutely.
You
You
know.
know,
It was
like
only
the Who.
later I realized that it's better to downsize and have smaller cabinets and you get even funkier, you know.
Yeah.
It's,
Easier on your back too.
yeah, exactly.
All that, you
Exactly.
know.
But I've probably played through every amp known.
And how about strings? I would think that everything was flat back in those days. Did
No,
you get?
round wound.
Oh, they already come out with those. Okay.
Yeah, well, of course, because John Entwistle was
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
the
late
famous. I
'60s.
mean, you know, he was the guy that Rotor Sound, you know, were making the strings for,
Right.
and so we loved the Who, and you know, you saw the adverts. John Entwistle uses Rotor Sound swing bass, so that's what I bought, and that's what I used for a long time.
Well, that must have been quite a change in sound just to have that option. You know, the whole roto sound versus the typical flat kind of sound that had been around for a
Well,
long
that's
time.
how I got into it. I never played the flats,
Okay.
so you know, when I tried flat wounds, I didn't really like them that much.
Yeah. I know the
Just
feeling.
what you're used to, really, I
Yeah.
suppose.
So you were with Velvet Opera for a while,
Yeah,
and then
and then being funky, I sort of joined, and through the Melody Maker Want ads once more, I joined the Foundations, which was another sort of English pop act who had had some hits in the mid 60s. Baby Now That I've Found You, and you know, and yeah, some Build Me Up Buttercup and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was like four of the original guys, and this was a sort of it was a band. It was Eric Allendale, rest in peace. He's what a lovely guy he was. He was a real mentor for me because he gave me lots of books to read, and he was very erudite, and he was an artist as well. And he was a great conga player and a trombonist. And he was in the original Foundations. He's from Jamaica,
Oh. Okay.
and you know, so he was just, it was, that was great for me to meet him and to travel with him, because we would travel up, we would do cabaret clubs, you know, we would do sort of a week in Shakespeare Club in Liverpool, or you know, there are all this kind of, there was this circuit in those days, what that they used to call the scampi in a basket sort of circuit, which was you would have, you know, a group on first, a local group or something, and you would have a TV comedian or a magician or something like that. It was cabaret, seated with dining and things like that.
Sure.
And this was a real big posh night out in Manchester, and particularly up north. And then we would come on, if we were the star billing, the Foundations, and play our hits. And a couple of, you know, like Curtis Mayfield or something like that, you know, whatever we felt like doing. And there was, you know, there was, yeah, it was a lovely mixed band. And so there were all these, there was Pat, the flute player from Trinidad, and I met there in the Foundations. We joined the same day. I met my dear friend, now also departed, Dave Vasco, who was sort of African Liverpudlian, and he was on guitar. And I later got him into a band called Clancy that I was in after the Foundations, and so we had a long friendship. And yeah, that's how it developed. So I did about 1.5 years with the Foundations, just paying your dues, you know, because you would play the cabaret club at sort of second in the night. Earlier in the evening, you would go around to play working men's clubs, do a quick 20 minutes and go, you know, sort of somewhere. And so it was hard work, but you know, it was the first real money I was earning. So that was kind of good.
Now,
Good to earn money.
were you just backing vocals in that group, or were you lead
No,
vocals?
I was playing bass. I was bass player
You're
all the
just
way
bass,
through.
no
Velvet
vocal.
Opera bass,
Okay.
and bass with the Foundations, and you know, backing vocals too. Yeah, I was doing backing vocals.
Who
But
were
we had a
some
singer, you
who were some
know.
of your vocal inspirations back then?
That's that's difficult, because I've never really thought, you know, oh, I could sing like that or something. But I don't know. Everyone from, you know, it's like I remember at the time I was listening to like early English stuff, Rod Stewart.
Hmm.
The early stuff with the Faces,
Sure.
and you know, saw Rod Stewart and the Faces at the Marquee there, playing to about 30 people once, and they were fantastic, and
I
they just
bet.
didn't give a hoot, you know, they just went for it, you know. And so, and you know, Rod Stewart had been singing around the clubs for some time, you know, and he was great, you know. He was Sam Cooke. He was a
Yeah.
white Sam Cooke, but he was
Sure.
great. You know, it's like you listen to Sam Cooke, you hear Rod Stewart. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's just like if you listen to Mick Jagger, or if you listen to Don Covey, you hear Mick Jagger. You know, it's sort of those influences. But yes, but I thought the early Elton John stuff was really good.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Tumbleweed Connection and all
yeah.
that.
He was on a roll there for through most of the '70s.
Really, well, he
Yeah,
had a great band. That trio, you know, Nigel Olsson and what was the bass player's name?
D. Murray.
Yes, very
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
excellent. Hey, Sean,
that's right.
good.
Um, I want to say, didn't he wind up playing with Bowie also, or I'm thinking of somebody else? Who was the bass player in the Spiders of Mars? Was it
Trevor Bolder? I don't think.
Boulder? That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
thinking
you're
of that.
thinking Mick Ronson played with
That's it. Okay, that's the connection. All right.
yeah, Mick
So,
Ronson was Spiders from Mars, Trevor Bolder,
yeah. Did
but
you?
I don't think. But I don't know. There's probably, if there's anybody listening, there's probably somebody there going, "No, it
Yeah.
wasn't him. It was somebody else."
Well, yeah. Well, okay, chat room. If you know better, let us know.
Yeah, whatever it is we might be talking about.
Yeah. Um.
I look
So,
very red on this screen. I've just come in from the
yeah,
donkeys.
you look like you got some sun.
No, it's hurricane wind out there, so
Oh,
I've been
wow. Okay. Yeah,
looking up the hill.
it's a beautiful sunny day here in Atlanta. So,
Hey,
you know, I'll take it while it lasts. So I noticed in '76 you played with Steve Hillage
I did,
on
and that
his
was after I'd
L
played
tour.
in Clancy. That was the early like 72 to 76. I was playing part of the pub rock scene in London with a band called Clancy, who was which was a band formed by Ernie Graham, who was in Heir Apparent back in the late 60s, who had an album produced by Jimi Hendrix. And
Very
in
cool.
fact, the single was Ernie's song called Rock and Roll Band. Henry McCulloch was in that band
Oh
too.
yeah, that went on to Wings later.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Grease Band. Yeah,
yeah.
Grease Band, then Wings. And so that band was really important. In fact, it was because of Clancy that I got the gig in Steve Hillage band. But and we had two albums out on Warner Brothers, Clancy, and because at that time the pubs were really all of a sudden this became a thing, pub rock.
Hmm.
The 101ers, the early Clash. There was the Brinsley Schwartz with Nick Lowe. They were the big stars, and also Ian Dury and
Sure.
the Kilburn and the High Roads. That was his band. And Chilly Willy and the Red Hot Peppers, Kokomo with Alan Spencer bass. Oh, what a great bass player he was.
Yeah, I was going to
And
ask, who were
that
some
was the
of
pub rock scene. So go ahead.
besides Entwistle, who were some of your early bass influences?
Uh,
I'm
I
guessing
must
maybe like
admit,
Jamerson after learning all the Motown and
well, definitely
yeah,
Jameson. Of course, I don't know a
yeah.
bass player who doesn't
They
admire
well they
Jameson. You know,
yeah, well, they'd be missing a big chunk of DNA by not checking him
history.
out.
Yeah, DNA is good.
You know,
Historical DNA. Well, it was in the pub rock days that I was starting to listen to a lot of things like that I found very influential. You know, like I really loved the Donny Hathaway live album with Willie Weeks on the bass.
he's great.
You know, I thought, oh yeah, yeah, okay. And just the way that he was placing stuff. And I was listening to jazz at the time. I was also listening to the Meters. You know,
Love them. Yeah.
oh God, you know, now that is a rhythm section. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so and that was the things we were listening to in the pub rock days. Really, with Little Feet.
Little
Uh,
Feet.
Little Feet
I love them.
were big favourites in
Uh,
London.
I'm
In fact,
working.
they did some legendary concerts in London.
I
Little
did
Feat.
not know they were so popular there.
Oh yeah, they were
Great.
huge in Europe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They,
yeah,
yeah. I'm looking
rightly
to.
so. They did because we with Clancy we were signed to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers brought over Little Feat, the Doobie Brothers, Graham Central Station, Tower of Power, and they put them on at the Rainbow Theatre different nights, and teaming up bands together, and the because the Little Feat were on with the Doobie Brothers, and the Doobie Brothers were top of the bill
Hmm.
because they'd had Long Train Running. It was a big hit.
Big hits, yes.
Little Feat
China
was
Grove.
still sort of coming up, yeah, that kind of thing. But Little Feat, that was such an amazing concert at the Rainbow because Little Feat just blew everybody away, and the Doobie Brothers just could not follow them.
I can imagine.
The audience wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, really.
Yeah, I'm looking to do a show about Little Feat. I do a themed show about certain bands from time to time, and
Okay.
I've been
Yeah, I
on a
love it.
big Little Feat bender for the past month or two. So I'm trying to get Lowell
Okay.
George's son to come co-host with me. So
Oh, wow.
fingers
Okay.
crossed. We'll see how that
Yeah.
pans out.
Brilliant.
He's interested, so
Okay.
we'll see what comes of that. So,
Well, good luck.
so tell me a bit about working with Hillage. Were you into
Yeah, then
Gong at
when
all
Clancy
before that?
broke up, the Steve Hillage was looking for a bass player. He was looking for a band, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Am
His
I right
manager
that
rang me up.
this album L had it was produced by Todd Rundgren and basically had
It
his
was.
Utopia band playing on it, Chasm
Yes,
Sultan, and all
that's what
those
it
guys.
was. That's
Yeah,
what it was. The thing is that all of a sudden it was a surprise hit for Virgin Records. It was out on Virgin, and I don't think anybody realised that it was just going to come into. It was going to be number 13 in the album charts all of a sudden, and so it was like, oh, put a band together, quick, do a tour, and Clancy had just broken up, and the Steve's manager, he knew that he liked the band, and so he just rang me up and said, Steve's looking for a bass player, go round to his address, go round there this afternoon. So I did. I went round there and we sat there and had a little jam for a couple of hours. And, he said, right, good. Okay, when do you start? Clive Bunker's playing drums.
yeah,
I'm still looking for a keyboard player, but yeah,
yeah.
so
How
that's it.
familiar were you with Gong previous to that?
A little bit, not
Yeah,
I wasn't a big fan or
yeah.
anything. Of course you were aware of them, and but no, I wasn't really a Gong head.
Did you like Tull any better than Gong?
So I bought the first two albums, of
Oh
course.
yeah,
You know,
great records.
Stand Up and the one before.
Yeah, in some ways, I don't think it ever got any better than that. But,
Well, Clive
but
was such a great drummer,
oh yeah,
such a great drummer. And
Glenn
that he
Cornick,
was
great
such
bass
a
player.
yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
And so that was a very happy time that to join Steve, get a proper wage, and first of all we had 3 weeks of like really intensive rehearsal uh, with and Steve. He sort of had this sort of hippie Jesus image,
oh sure, yeah, the whole Gong thing
a
was all about
gong
that.
thing,
Yeah, almost like
teapots
a
and stuff
commune, a
like.
musical commune or something.
And it was.
Yeah.
And there was Stephen Miquette. There was a guy called Basil Brooks also on sequences, a little early sequences. And they got a guy called Phil Hodge on keyboards, who somebody at the record company knew somebody whose brother played keyboards, Keith Hodge. Get him down here. And Steve meticulously told him what to play, and he did a great job. But he was a semi-pro. But yeah, so that. But Steve was really focused. He's a really focused individual.
Mhm.
He knows exactly what he wants, and so it's great. He's a great leader. You can just go along with that, and he'll tell you what to play, and then he gives you a bit of leeway, and you can put your own things in. But basically, we were doing the L album, some of Fish Rising,
Oh,
and
that's a great
that was
record
it.
too.
And then 3 weeks of like intensive rehearsal, and then we were out on the road and did toured around UK, Europe, and then we went to America and played. We were supporting the Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, I love
in
ELO.
a stadium tour. So like the first gig I ever did in the States, first time I ever went to the States, and the first gig was the Forum in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, hey,
Yeah,
I
no
thought.
pressure. Right, exactly.
So we
What?
did Madison Square Gardens, we did the Cow Palace,
Wow.
and lots of like
Yeah,
Cobo Hall,
because that
Detroit,
was right when ELO was kind of peaking, right, with
the
their
New
big.
World Record, New
Okay, yeah,
World
so
Record.
yeah, very much on the rise there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were really. That was it. That was when they went stadium.
Okay, you're right, with their big
No, or is that
hamburger looking.
stadium or is that arenas? No,
Yeah,
no. The hamburger flying saucer was, I think, the next tour.
the next to it, out of the
Yeah,
blue
yeah.
tour. Yeah,
No,
okay.
this was probably what I don't know. What's it is? Arena, stadium? I don't know. They look
So
big to me.
yeah, so
I've
it's
no idea.
pre-hamburger.
Pre-hamburger, yeah.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, I love Jeff Lynne. I'm actually in an ELO tribute band at the moment.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's been fun.
Well done.
It's fun to dissect a catalog like that and kind of
Yeah,
get inside the head of the person that wrote it. And I learned that Jeff Lynne has never met a four chord he couldn't resist going from major to minor on.
okay.
Yeah, you know that move.
How about that? Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
among other things, it's amazing how he could squeeze that move into so many songs and without being super obvious. Like, oh, there he goes again, but it's always genius anyway. I don't know how he does it.
Totally, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Did you see the move back in the day?
Yes, yeah, and that was that with Jeff Lynne? No, Jeff Lynne at that time was with
The
the
idle
Idle
race?
Race. So
Yeah.
who was playing guitar with the Move? Roy Wood, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. Then they
It was
hooked up
Roy Wood,
the first
Trevor
ELO.
Burton,
Yeah.
Bev Bevan, and singer.
Yeah. A
What
lot
was
of
his name?
folks I think were more
What
into
was
the
it? What
move.
was it, Sean? What was his name? The singer of the Move, Carl Wayne.
Okay, there you go. You got me on that one. I think a lot of folks that heard the move first kind of were always more a fan of that sound than the ELO one that came later, a little more
Maybe, but
polished.
some people are stick
You
in
know,
the mud.
I like it all. I
Yeah,
like it all.
me
It's all good
too.
stuff.
I like it all.
So I'm under the impression, I think I read that Hillage's management hooked you up with Camel. Am I right?
It was Laurie Small, the tour manager,
Okay.
who sort of recommended me to Camel when after Richard Sinclair left. Well, the band sort of that was after Bardens left and Richard
Yeah.
Sinclair
How
and they got in
familiar?
Kit Watkins, and they were just rehearsing up in a barn in Norfolk, sort of waiting for the bass player to arrive. And I think they tried out quite a few, but so I was a last ditch, and so I went up there on the train, and I sort of they were playing, and I didn't know that much about them. I did a bit of
Yeah, I was going to ask.
of
Yeah.
did a bit of swatting up because when we were with Clancy, we supported them at the Roundhouse on their Snow Goose tour, and I don't. I think we had another gig to go to, so we went. I didn't really watch them, so yeah. So I had to sort of swat up on, as we say, on the Camel stuff. But basically, I saw they went in. They said, "Oh, here's one of the new songs we're working on." Him to her, it was.
Mm-hmm. Great
So they
day.
played it through, and I was sort of, trying to join in, and I sort of this sort of da da don da bon da da don. That's what I kind of came up with, and yeah, so that was. And then it must have been all right because then, I went home and a couple of days later got the call saying, well,
Come
we're going to
back.
come back. We're going to rehearse, record, go on tour. So, and that was fun time. That was
I can
really,
imagine. Yeah,
that was a good time. Yeah.
Did you feel like the music really clicked with you once you heard it?
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Funnily enough, that when I started doing sort of like woodshedding to sort of listening,
Mhm.
to, oh, I better listen to some of their stuff. The first album I listened to was Breathless,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which was, funnily enough, one that Andy Latimer never really liked that
Yeah, I've
much.
heard
I
it's
think it's
it's.
because of the situation personally in the band.
Well, that
It
can
wasn't
happen.
harmonious.
That can happen. Some albums that the fans think, oh, that's a great record, and then
Yeah,
the band's like, oh, it wasn't very fun to make, so it's kind of
yeah.
tainted in my memory.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but that first track, uh, as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, this is lovely. This is like I really like this sort of like it's very British and it's really sort of melodic and it's beautiful actually. And I've been trying to get Andy to consider doing that song, Breathless. She takes my breath away. I've always wanted to. I've always suggested it when we're sort of like getting the tours together. Sort of, what should we play? Breathless. Yeah, So it never makes it, but
It's on your wish list.
it's on my wish list. I'll get him maybe next tour. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Come on, Andy. Um, and that was one of the two records they did with Richard Sinclair, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thought so. He seemed like an interesting. I was never convinced he was a great fit for Camel. What do you think?
I think that Andy Latimer would agree with you.
Richard just seemed like he was Mr. Caravan. He's the
Yeah.
kind of the
Yeah.
voice of Canterbury.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then the whole Canterbury scene, Camel kind of gets lumped in there by association, I think.
Yeah, but it's not so. It's
No, because Canterbury always seemed to me like this rather jazz-inspired stuff with almost a dose of Monty Python lyrically. You
yes,
know,
yeah, yeah.
kind
Art,
of
art, art rock.
artsy, whimsy, jazzy.
Artsy whimsy jazzers. That's
I
that's
think
that's it in a nutshell, really.
that's
I
a
think.
new subgenre. That's
Yeah,
right.
artsy
Artsy,
whimsy
whimsy,
jazzers. I
jazzy.
like it actually.
Yeah, actually, I'd go for some of that. I mean, I
Yeah,
love those groups. Natural Health,
yeah,
and all that. That was great. Very unique stuff.
yeah.
Um, so I was
What else?
curious, of the albums before you were in the band, what is your favorite? The Camel ones.
The early ones.
Mhm.
I don't know. Breathless.
No, I mean like album wise. Is there a
Album wise,
particular?
yeah. Still, I mean,
Still that one, yeah. Okay.
actually, I never really. Yeah, no. There's it's kind of like what's the word? It's not consistent, that record. I guess Moon Madness, really. That's why it was great to do it and really, because when we did the last tour, Moon Madness, we sort of we actually, Denis Clement and myself, we rehearsed for about 4 days before the rest of the band arrived. Sort of before Andy got there,
Hmm.
just so that we could be listening to the bass and drums and trying to replicate Doug and Andy, because we felt if we're going to do it, let's do it how people remember it as much as possible. And I made a big mistake on that one actually, because I was convinced when I was, listening to it, because of the sound and the tone of Doug's bass playing, I was convinced he was using a pick. And so I learnt the whole thing playing a pick, and I played the whole of the Moon Madness. I hardly ever play with a pick. I play with the fingers. And it wasn't until sort of, I don't know whether it was the end of the tour or even afterwards, that Andy said, "Oh no, Doug never played with a pick." And I said, "Why didn't you tell me that before?" But
Right.
I don't know, but I think we managed a kind of an approximation of what that was. But it was very interesting to go back and listen to those parts, because on previous tours, especially with Andy Ward and stuff, who definitely wanted to get away from, he wanted to keep going in different directions, Andy Ward. So that whenever we did songs like Song Within a Song, which was a staple of the tours, really, it would be arty, whimsy, jazzy, rather than sort of how the album was. And we thought that was just fine, But so it was a kind of challenge to listen. So Denny and I really worked on the rhythm section parts before Andy and Pete, the keyboard player, got there.
Now, I'm guessing some of those songs you've been playing with Camel anyway, because they're just kind of concert staples. Am I right? And then
Yeah,
there
yeah, yeah, yeah.
were some that you probably never played
Yeah,
before at all.
Lunacy. I think all of those we'd played. I always
Yeah.
used to sing "Spirit of the Water." Another Night, yeah, or various tours. Never on the same tour, but we would pick and choose from various things. Yeah.
That DVD turned out beautifully. I've got it right here, and
The last one,
yeah,
Albert Hall, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's very nice. Yeah,
it
I
looked
like
like it
that.
was a
That was a
magical
great
night.
gig. That was
Yeah.
the last gig. It's the last time we played together. And what was great about that tour was the fact that we were back to a four-piece again, because Pete Jones is such a talented guy.
He
I mean,
sure
he's
is.
a major talent. He's a keyboard player, sax player, great
Singer.
singer,
Yeah.
and yeah, so he could handle everything. Whereas previous tours, we'd had Guy, bless him, rest in peace, and but we always had to have somebody maybe like Jason doing the string parts and doing the orchestrations.
All right.
And the minute you get two keyboard players in, it's something happens. It's sort of like the whole thing becomes a little more solidified, a bit more, not solidified. It becomes a little more intransigent. In sort of, it's sort of like you can make it sound really good because all the parts are there, but you haven't got that sort of that organic interplay that you've got when keyboards, guitar, bass, drums. This is another keyboard player is not so easy. So but you've always got the possibility of jamming and or improvising, and because we can all hear what each other's doing.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the rehearsals for that tour were fantastic. We rehearsed down at Real World Studios
Oh, nice.
for about 2 weeks. Not in the studio itself, in a sort of a huge tin shed
Adjacent.
somewhere adjacent, somewhere the other side of the tracks. And but we stayed down there for I don't know, must have been about 3 weeks in all. And yeah, we would learn the set during the day and really do the set, and then we'd have dinner in the house, and after dinner we would go back and we would just jam.
Very nice.
And that was just so much fun, and that's where the band really came together. And I think that that sort of evenings rest and recreation jamming, where we would just we would just take off and it would go all over the place, and we'd get very silly, and and we would end up laughing a lot,
Did
and
you ever
that really brought the band together.
do any
Bond.
covers while you were just jamming, or was it all improvised?
Oh yeah, actually, funnily enough, we did lots of covers, but we would then sort of do them in different, or we'd take a Camel number and do it in about 10 different styles in 20 minutes, sort of, yeah, well, I've got recordings of this stuff, you know.
Okay, well, I'm waiting for the reggae dub version of
There's
Lady
a bit of
Fantasy.
reggae going on there, yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
But, yeah, but, basically we were just jamming, everybody having fun. And that's really good. You can do that. You can learn your thing in the daytime, do the jamming, and then when you come back in, somehow you're all well oiled to carry on rehearsing the set.
I think the dinner helps. It kind
The
of
dinner is really important aspect of that.
resets everything.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know. So, talk a bit about how your bass rig and gear evolved through the years in Camel? What were you using early on? Were you still into P basses, or I know you got the wall eventually.
No, well, it was when I joined Camel, and the first thing I did with them was we were recording at the Farmyard Studios in north of London, and with Rupert Hine,
Yeah.
also died this year. Dear Rupert, who was great producer. It was sort of, yeah, it was very educational working with Rupert, because he's very very erudite and very elegant and very full of stories and lots of fun to listen to. And I was playing my precision, and he said, "Oh, yeah, we've got to get you some new basses," So I said, "Okay," And he told me he was friends with Ian Waller and Pete the Fish, and because he was in, what was it, Quantum Jump with John Perry, and John Perry was one of the first bass players who Wall actually made basses for. He was the guy who they tried them out and they developed it together. And and it was just down the road. The factory was in the next town in High Wycombe. And so the next day along came Pete and Ian Waller, Mr. Wall, with two basses, a fretless and a fretted. And that was it. Best basses. That was it.
So you loved them from the get-go.
From the get-go, it completely opened my horizons, because not the sound of the fretted was just so what I was really looking for all the time. Very round and sonorous, but it could do lots of different things. You could get lots of different sounds out of it. And the fretless was just that completely, and it was the first time I played a fretless, and on the I Can See Your House From Here, which I played on ice, I think.
Okay.
And,
amazing track.
And there's another track I played the fretless on in that, I can't remember. But then I played more fretless on Nude, the next album, and it was just such a great instrument. The wall was so beautiful. You just played something and it sounded great. So that really upped my game as far as what I felt I could do.
Do you feel like it had more to offer sonically than just a P bass?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I figured,
no question.
Yeah.
No competition.
Is it active or is it passive pickups?
Active, yeah.
It is. Okay. No, that makes a big difference too.
Yeah. It's still the fretted, still my go-to.
Oh, there it is.
There
now,
it is.
Am I imagining this, or did you sell one of those about 10 years ago? Was it you, or am I thinking of Colin from Ecstasy?
did. I sold one. Because I got another one. I got another fretless.
Oh,
and
okay.
that I bought from Pete the Fish. He sadly passed away too. And it was one of their kind of it's like the end of the Wall era, and so I bought it, and I don't know, I never got on with it in the same way, so I put it up for sale.
Well, I noticed that you used the wall pretty exclusively with Camel, but you kind of went back to Fender on one of the recent DVDs, the one with the itchy coochie one. What's that called?
The Hoochie Coochie, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the Japanese tour.
Yeah.
That was a one-off Japanese tour. That was the first time we played with Pete. And basically, they were hired in. So we hired in Fender Precision, and I just thought I'd try going back to the Precision. And so I hired a Precision. A lot of the gear we used on that tour was hired. We travelled
Just
virtually
rented
next to
basically
nothing.
once you got
Rented,
there.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the promoters they supplied the
That's
that's
right.
part of the deal.
Okay.
They
Well,
supplied the equipment, and we just because it's good. I don't really like shipping this in freight these
oh
days.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've got a big sturdy case for it, but
Much too
it
valuable.
always makes me nervous. So
Oh, okay. Well, I wondered if you had, yeah, at the time, I just assumed that you'd sold the wall, and I didn't
no, no,
realize,
no.
really realize you had two, and they had gone back to Fender. But then I saw another on the Moon or on the Moon Madness DVD. You're back with the wall, so it's like
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
So
yeah. That's the number one axe.
sure, that's kind of the Camel sound for you, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
well, and then it sort of obviously got a bit old. Things like capacitors wear out and things like that. So before the last tour, um, the Paul, the guy who was restarted Wall, he was Pete the Fish's young assistant,
Oh, okay.
and at the end of the Wall era, and basically he got all the machines and everything and moved it down to south of England where he was living,
Hmm.
and re-established Wall. It took him a few years to get it back up and running, but now if you want to order one from Wall, and they're brilliant instruments, there's at least, I don't know, at least 6 months, probably a year waiting list,
No, for them to make it,
and you've got to have some money too.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But I said to him, look, I've got to go out on tour and I really want to take the Wild this time, and will you refurb it for me? And so I sent it, and he very kindly sort of refurbed it and sent it back.
That's
And
awesome.
so it's better than ever now, actually. It's really fruity.
Very cool. Well, I'm thinking of some other people that are well known that use the wall as well, and I guess for us Yanks, probably the most obvious is Getty Lee from Rush.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
he uses the
oddly
Wild quite
produced by
often.
Rupert Hine,
Yes, yes,
although
of course. Yeah,
Getty
well,
had
that's probably the connection.
it,
Rupert was
it could
always
be.
pushing Wild basses.
Yeah, well, it was a good thing because Getty went through a phase where he was playing the Steinberger, and those are always
Yeah,
such odd beasts, kind of dark in tone and just kind
yeah.
of unusual. Just looks
I
kind
never
of
got
odd
on with
too.
them. Never got
No,
on.
no,
I never got on with a headless bass. Actually, I saw something missing. What
I know it's like the
you
first
look at the
fret
end and
feels
it's
so weird.
yeah, yeah,
There's
no.
nothing else there.
I thought,
And then
well,
I guess Colin from XTC, another wall user.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You ever meet him or see them?
No, actually,
Oh, okay.
no, never run into them.
Well, they hadn't played out in
Um,
a long time.
and of course, one of the greatest, Mick Kahn.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I was to say for fretless. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
No one's
also
better.
sadly no longer with us.
Yeah.
He had a fantastic tone,
Oh, yeah.
which
One
the
of a
wall
kind.
really helps you to get.
Good point. Yeah.
And John Giblin, who played on Kate Bush records,
Sure.
session player, and he also
Yeah.
played on the Duncan Brown albums. And I had to learn his parts because I went on tour with Duncan, Andy Ward, and I, sort of 1981. Yeah.
So I have a little slideshow of the albums that Camel did once you were in the fold. I was wondering if we could maybe
Good
talk a little
Lord.
about each one of them and
If you like.
some memories and stuff. I'm sure the fans would love to hear a bit about the making of each one of them and just random memories or maybe even songs that you think maybe are overlooked that maybe they should look into and check
I'll
out.
do my best. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, hold on a second here and I will go ahead and fire this up. All right. Can you see that?
Hmm. Well, that's the one we're talking about with Rupert producing.
Yeah. Now,
The
I got to
Farmers.
ask about this cover art. Was this ever banned anywhere? Because
No,
that's good. That's good because it's a little, it's a little
but there's
provocative.
yeah, but there's a story attached to that,
Oh,
and that is the album was supposed to be called Endangered Species, and I don't know, it just came out, there was a joke one night, and then it was the famous joke of Jesus on the cross. I can see your house from here. Um, yeah, so all of a sudden that became the album title because it was sort of funny, and we were sort of, I don't know. It should have been called Endangered Species. Actually, it would have been much better.
I don't know. I think it works better with the title, like he could see your house from here.
Okay, cool.
So
All
what? I
right.
mean, he's got very good vision. That's it. Yeah. So this was the first one that you were on. And where was this recorded at?
The Farmyard Studios
Farmyard
in
Studios.
sort of Wickham in.
And this was kind of like a fresh lineup, right? In some ways.
Well, yeah, it was for me, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Kit Watkins. That was Kit Watkins.
Yeah. Could you share a little bit about Kit? Most of us know him from the American prog band Happy the Man.
Yeah, Happy the
Quite the
Man.
fleet-fingered Moog player.
Oh, genius. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wow. There's few people I like to hear more than him play it.
Yeah, yeah, great Moog player. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that was what we had is sort of like Hammond organ, Selena string machine,
sure.
and a Moog. That was
Hmm.
the setup.
Ever any just acoustic piano?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
thinking.
I mean, there's acoustic piano on Ice. That's Kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
A few thoughts on Andy's guitar playing. I mean, this is when you first got a chance to kind of
I
get to
think the
know him.
boy, the boy will. He is, he'll make good. That boy.
Oh, it's such an eloquent player, I guess.
Well, I've always loved the way that he can make something work with just a few notes.
Oh yeah, and just
And
make the
his feeling is really, that's his feeling. He's going for something, and it's sort of, he's not interested in playing a million notes. He's interested in finding the note.
Oh, and he does, I mean, I've
Yeah.
described him, for people that aren't familiar with him. I said he reminds me of a bit of David Gilmour if David Gilmour had more chops. Uh, you know,
Okay.
that's well, that's
Oh,
similar kind of one
true
note.
controversy. Yeah,
One note gets you right in the heart.
yeah,
It's a short list of guys that can do that, and Andy's definitely on it.
yeah.
Such wonderful playing. Um, any particular tracks stand out to you on this particular album? Any favorites?
Ice.
Yeah, of course.
That's the classic
Oh
of
yes.
the album, really. Some of the other songs are a bit throwaway. I find, it's also got like the single, the sort of "Your Love Is Stranger Than Mine," which was a sort of a little riff that Kit was playing and Kit and Andy wrote, I think, and I wrote the lyrics to that. That's
And
been my only contribution, I
do you
think.
sing it on the record?
I sing it,
I
yeah,
thought it sounded like you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm singing quite a bit on that record, I think. I don't know. Can't remember now. It's a long time ago, Sean.
Now, how do you collaborate with Andy when it comes to writing pieces for Camel? Is it mostly he brings an idea and then you
Oh no, he
put your
brings
part to it?
he brings the idea. It's his.
Yeah,
Camel is Andy's
baby.
band. It's Andy Latimer
Right.
is Camel. I'm sort of happy to be there, and Andy's a great friend of mine, and we have a lot of fun when we're working together, and it's great.
Oh, absolutely.
I always get treated really nicely. So it's fun.
Oh, well, yeah. I think your partnership is a wonderful thing.
And I try to sort of, sort of suggest things for him to listen to, or and it's kind of active in sorting out the set lists as well, and just generally thinking about that side of it.
Are you the one that keeps writing Breathless on it?
Yeah,
I, I thought so.
given up now.
And do you remember the tour for this album?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
First time I went to Japan, and through Europe and Japan. Yeah.
Were you a supporting act or?
No, we were. It was our tour. Oh
Oh,
yeah. No,
very cool.
we
Okay.
did good business in Japan. It was really quite good actually. And throughout Europe, we were just it was Camel.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So, but it was a problem because it's sort of like Germany was sort of like not quite as good as it used to be. It had been in the past, and so, but there again, it was coming up in other territories. That's showbiz, that's the way it goes.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely.
it's
Okay.
showbiz.
And then the next album, that was Nude, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us a bit about this one. Was this recorded at the same studio?
No, it's recorded at Abbey Road.
Oh, that's a
Studio 2.
slight upgrade.
Yeah, Studio 2 Abbey Road. There's nothing wrong with Farmyard
Oh,
Studios.
no, no, that's great too. But
Abbey Road, of course, has got all that legendary clout to it.
sure.
But yeah, that was good. Uh, yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of interesting. I'm singing a bit more on that. I sing Drafted and City Life. So the first two songs I'm singing, Andy opens up City Life, and then I'm singing the song itself. And Drafted, yeah. So that was really nice that gave that Andy sort of gave those songs for me to sing. And I played some nice fretless on that album. I think that was fun. I was really sort of by that time getting into it a bit more. And yeah, Mel Collins was playing some sax on that, and yeah, that was a fun time. I got my friend Gaspar Lawal, the Nigerian percussionist, in to sort of play on one of the tracks, um, and so that was kind of that was nice. Did reasonably well, that album actually.
Yeah, I think it's a fan favorite.
Yeah,
What can you tell me about the cover art?
don't know really.
Yeah.
It was sort of like the designer came up with it. It's nothing to do with me. So
Yeah.
it was sort of like something kind of Japanese.
Yeah, it reminds me of the covers for a group called Jade Warrior.
Oh
Actually,
yeah,
very similar. There's usually Mount Fuji somewhere in the background and
yeah, yeah,
an angry samurai.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
And
similar kind of
the
style.
writing like the
Yeah.
Japanese banners.
And what do you think's the definitive track on this particular album?
That one, well, for the band, I suppose the one we always played is Drafted.
Right.
But there's some good things on that. I really like The Last Farewell. Some lovely pieces on
Do
there.
you prefer it to the previous album?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
more cohesive. It's more of a piece, and it's a
Mhm.
better piece of writing, I find.
Yeah.
Like the previous album, there was sort of there are other writers involved and other lyricists involved who were not in the band, and so it was very much kind of like trying to make that fit. But now I think that this was sort of Andy really came up with something that was much more of a whole, much more cohesive.
Really hangs together as a
It
statement.
hangs together. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, who was in the
The
keyboard chair
tour
for
was great.
this?
The tour was great, except towards the end of it. When Andy Ward became sort of rather ill. So
Yeah, no, I understood. Did he have trouble with his hands or was it something else?
that was later.
That was later.
That was
Okay.
later.
Now, am I right that the band kind of eh, disbanded after this album
It certainly
somewhat?
did. It just fell
Yeah.
apart. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Andy just
What was the
dissolved it.
story behind that in
He
short?
didn't want to carry on. Well, because Andy Ward was in a bad way,
Okay.
mentally. So I think that was just too upsetting. Everything was just too upsetting. It just didn't
All right.
hang together. I remember the end of that tour. I think finished in France, and I got off the tour bus in Paris, and I lived in Paris for about 5 months.
Oh, not a bad way to go. Not at all.
Yeah, well, there was a mademoiselle involved, but so and that was it. It's kind of like, oh God, get out of here.
Yeah.
So that was a shame. That was a real shame
Now,
because it was going quite well up till then.
yeah. Now, what's the story with this next one? Was this a contractual obligation kind of record?
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So you're not on this one.
I'm
So,
not. That's Dave Payton and the Abbey Road
now
session.
that now we all know him from
Alan
"Oh Ho
Parsons.
Ho It's Magic," that song from Pilot in the
Yeah,
early
yeah.
'70s, right? Same singer, bass player. How did he come? Did he kind of stick around and do some backing vocals on future albums?
Yeah, well, it was. I don't know. I sort of lost touch for a while. I was sort of. Andy was sort of going on his own, and this one, I kind of guess it was like a contractual obligation. I don't know. Yes, he had to come up with something, I
Yeah.
guess.
Do you
But
all do any songs from this album live?
no,
No, no.
never. But I saw this tour. I saw them at the Hammersmith Odeon, and I went backstage and said hello. It was the first time I'd seen Andy for a long time, and everybody was very nice. It was very good. It was
Did it feel a little funny to be sitting out there watching Camel instead of being down there playing?
I guess so. I don't know, really.
Almost like, like a ex-wife with a new husband.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, a
I
little
don't
bit.
know. It's sort of it seems and he was doing his thing, and that was okay. And
Okay.
I didn't really think too much about it,
Yeah.
actually.
All righty. And then
It
this,
was, it was good. Well, I'm not playing on this
I
either.
didn't think you were on this one either.
I'm on
Yeah.
the live version of that when we went out on the tour because this was another one. Davy Payton plays on this,
Hmm.
and this is good. It's got some good songs on it. It's good, and it was after this that Andy rang up. Maybe David Payton didn't want to do the tour or something, but Andy rang me up and said, "Would you do the tour with us?" So that was the Pressure Points
Hmm.
tour. So then I was sort of, and I said, "Yeah, great."
So you're back in the fold at that
I was
point.
kind of back in the fold.
Yeah. Any songs from this album stick out in your mind now?
Well, the title track is very good. You know, Long Goodbyes, of course, we still play that,
Yeah.
and because it's a bit of a barnstormer,
Sure.
Long Goodbyes. So Refugee, things like that. It's nice. West Berlin. Yeah, those kind of things.
Okay. I appreciate you taking a
It's
peek
good.
at these.
It's got a concept, and it's I like it. I enjoyed playing it. So there's some nice bits I had to learn. So yeah.
Um,
So what's next?
what's next? Let's see here. Another concept, I do believe.
Lovely record.
Yeah. And you are on this one,
I'm
correct?
on this one.
Yeah. And I'm guessing
Busy,
this is
but
all about the Dust Bowl and that
well,
sort of thing.
it's for me. This is a lovely story because, well, the story itself, but the actual the fact that after the Pressure Points tour, Andy was holed up in litigation with the old management and trying to get back some rights for the original band, and realizing that there'd been some sort of things going on that they didn't know about, So he ended up being involved with a court case for some time, and actually, which was successful. You know, he came through, and he won that case. And it's, after that, he was trying to get a deal, and this was just, I don't know. It was just a time that it was very hard to get a deal for. You know, it was a low point for prog rock,
Oh yes.
and so he just couldn't get a deal, and they decided to up sticks and go to California, and start their own record label. And it was just at that time when this, you know, this was sort of this idea was coming up that you could make your own albums and, you know, get them pressed, and thanks to some really good distribution from Bertus in Holland throughout Europe, it's really sort of, they managed to establish Camel Productions as a label.
That's great. Just kind of circumvent the big
So kind
boys.
of like the story of the album is also a bit of their story too, Andy and Susan. So, you know, it's, I like that. It's nice.
Yeah. Any songs stand out on this one for you?
Oh, lots of them. I
Yeah.
think the whole album is really, this is, you know, really good. I mean, I think for me, this and Harbour of Tears are like real high points.
Okay. I
Great
think
records.
I think that's coming up now.
Yeah, Harbour of Tears. Well, I was really pleased that Andy invited me over to mix this. I mean, I went over and played on some things, and then later on, I went over to where they were living in California to mix it. So this was mixed by me and Andy, which I'm really proud of because it's not bad.
No,
You
it's a
know,
great
on
album.
24 track tape with a little Soundcraft desk, you know, 16 track Soundcraft and a 24 track, but we managed it. And yeah, you know, 24 track tape with lots of different instruments on one track, you know, so you've got to sort of, and no automation, you know, so everybody's sort of like the pair of us hands on deck, you know, and faders and this and that.
For those that don't know, remind us what the premise was behind this, the concept for this particular album.
And is sort of thinking about his Irish side of his family, and just reading about something, reading about the Cove Harbour, and you know how it was called the Harbour of Tears.
Hmm.
I think it's just something that Susan was. She was a book that she was reading, and she came up with great lyrics. You know, I mean, all those each song is sort of it says something. It's a little block in the story. It's really very good. I think I really enjoyed. There's a lot of great songs on that, and of course we have still been playing Coming of Age and things like that. Lovely structures to play. You know, it's got lots of dynamics and yeah,
Sure, and that and
always
you
exciting to play. Actually, Coming of Age, there's bits in that really, you know, I really love it when we get to that bit. You know,
now
things like that.
the
It's
live coming of age DVD, was that from this tour?
There was a tour that followed that
Okay.
with Dave Stewart on drums and Foss Patterson on keyboards.
Yeah, that's a great DVD.
Yeah, I mean, you know, uh, Foss being more of a sort of Hammond and piano guy, he's sort of we were all playing keyboards. You know, there was like I had a keyboard, Andy had a keyboard, and so I was playing some string parts and cello and you know had some bass pedals and things like this, and so you know, boy, you had to be sober. You know,
Oh yeah,
it was really
have to have your wits about you.
challenging. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it was good. I think we did that very well. I like the live album video. I think it's it's the band. It's in a good light. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the first live DVD I got of Camel, and
Mm.
it was just a good cross section of some of the greats in the catalog. So
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
let's see, and well, I guess this is it. I
you've
can't
missed
believe.
out Rajaz.
Oh, you're right. I've got
You've
it
missed out
around here.
Rajaz,
You're
which
right. I have it too.
I
Hold
like
on.
very much.
Yeah, let me see. Maybe I've got it in the wrong order. Nah, well, darn. Well, let's talk about Rajaz for a minute. Sorry, I thought I
Yeah,
had.
well, Rajaz was then recorded. By that time, they'd moved to a place down on the coast, uh, near near a a little town called Pescadero, just south of Half Moon Bay, and there was a sort of quite a remote place there. And there's quite a big barn which he turned into his studio, and yeah, we did a lot of stuff there actually. Did a lot of stuff.
And what
Did
was there a
an album
concept
there.
behind that particular album as well?
Yeah, I mean, as Andy will tell you, the title track was I. It's all during the after the Pressure Points tour, and then all during the '80s. I was in a band called the Three Mustaphas Three,
Yes.
which was another education for me because that was a great combo of very learned people who were all specialists in different areas, and we were, and there was a lot of humor involved.
Oh,
And
yes.
basically, we were doing cover versions of songs from everywhere, from Tanzania to to the Balkans. We started off doing a lot of Balkan material, Greek songs, Serbian songs, some Kosovo songs, some Albanian tunes. Because two of the guys were very cognizant with this area and had travelled there and collected songs, and so there were a lot of very intelligent people in that band, and that was an education. Very knowledgeable musical people, and great players, and we just had a lot of fun, and that was a really busy time. That was I sort of we did about 6 tours of the States, sort of starting out playing. There's a great video on YouTube which somebody put up of bits of video of us playing something called the Double Door Inn in Charlottesville, North Virginia, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And uh, this was literally like the Blues Brothers playing in the
Right.
in the cowboy bar. But that was things like that. We were playing small, unlikely clubs and colleges, and it sort of built up over a few tours. We were doing quite well, and we were touring a lot in Europe. When we went to Japan, we were touring all the time in Europe and in the UK, and had a kind of we had this. It was a cult following, and I guess you'd call it. We would, and so we could do the kind of like world music things that was starting to come up then, and which of course we were all involved in. Ben Mandelson, who was Hijaz Mustafa, he was the bouzouki player violinist,
Hmm.
and he was also starting at that point Globe Style Records, which was run by Ace Records in the UK, and putting out some great music from around the world. And this was when it was like people were suddenly listening to different things, and so we were kind of there at the beginning of that sort of new awareness of things outside the Anglo-American sphere. And so that was really good times, very good times.
What
And
albums? What albums did you do with the Mustaphas?
well, all of them except
All
the
of them.
first one. I'm not on the first one. That was Usak playing cello, which they recorded in an empty swimming baths shortly before it was demolished in
Wow,
London.
some
Um,
reverb.
live, live to two track, and that was called Bam. And then Usak left, and I joined. I said I don't play cello, and Ben said doesn't matter because I was playing bass with Ben and the drummer Nigel Huzam and Hijaz um, in London. A sort of a Ghanaian UK Ghanaian band called Orchestra Jazeera, and I was playing with them. And we were playing in a couple of other bands too around the clubs, like an R&B band. No, it was like a blues pub band. And yeah, so then I joined the Mustaphas, and that sort of somehow started to take off. It sort of, and we had a lot of fun. We were masquerading. You couldn't do this these days. People would say cultural appropriation. Well, some people said it
Right.
then, actually. Some people said it then. Or you know, but we thought, how can we play all this, stuff like an Albanian song and a salsa piece and sort of a Congolese soukous, and then string this all together. And so we masqueraded as a sort of a family of brothers and an uncle. And then sometimes we were 17 of us, so everybody got
Wow.
names. But the nucleus of the band, because sometimes we had a string quartet and a brass section, but the nucleus of the band, we were all named after Arabic modes.
Okay.
Arabic modes, like scales, music
Right.
scale.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's Hijaz, Isfahani, percussionists, Niaveti, sadly no longer with us. Isfahani, sadly no longer with us. Oh, my friends disappear. And and everybody, and I was Saba, because there's a Saba Habas, and that's also a scale, a mode. So anyway, we were masquerading as that, and some people, especially in America, they were kind of like, really, are you guys for real or what? It's sort of, oh yes, no, no. Where are you from? Oh, we're from out of town.
We're
So
from the Balkans.
well, we never said that. We said
Yeah.
we said we're from out of town, but wherever we were. But yeah, so there was that funny thing, and then the albums were, the first one I did was a live album with the orchestra band. That was with the 17 piece, which we went over to Berlin to play. We did 3 nights in a place in Berlin with this, because in Germany we were touring a lot in Germany, thanks to the people at Piranha, and who believed in us, and we ended up doing quite a few tours in Germany. In fact, we were touring. We did an amazing tour with the Dissidenten and Carte de Séjour, which was a French band led by Rashid Taha, who became quite famous. He died recently. Um, and Dissidenten, who was a German kind of band who've been doing a lot of world music, Indian, North African kind of fusions. And we all went on a tour together, all on the same coach. And this was in 85 or 86, whatever it was. It was when Chernobyl happened.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
Well, I'd
I
say
remember the Dissidentum bassist showing Uwe, who he was showing us the newspaper. He said, "Look, this is a map, from the newspaper." He says, "Here comes the radiation. This coming this way, sort of like there were arrows pointing." He says, "And look, we're going this way." And we were going straight into it, so it was kind of like quite exciting. And so we
yeah.
all had to leave our shoes outside the hotel room and things like that.
Wow, that's just like being in Japan again, right?
Yeah,
Leave your
fabulous.
shoes at the door.
Fabulous.
Were you playing stand-up bass with the Mustaphas, or was it electric?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but on touring, I was playing electric bass. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I saw a rather humorous video on YouTube yesterday.
yeah,
You
yeah. That's
playing the
right.
stand-up with the fez on.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
Fez in
Um,
suits.
it's quite a melting pot, though. I mean, a lot of groups would probably just focus on one country's music, but you guys really mixed it up.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
we were trying to learn and trying to, we were doing it for our own enjoyment too, sort of
sure.
like learning this stuff,
Well,
how do they play that? Let's listen to that, and try and learn it. And of course, a lot of the guys in the band, they could play lots of different instruments, dead sheep with pipes sticking out of them, and bagpipes, flutes, all kinds of like flutes, accordions, and yeah. So it was an educational time. Anyway, I can relate that to the Camel story because I think that's how I got into it.
now it
Uh,
was this is
was because the Rajaz thing. I came off of I was in between while I was still doing the Mustaphas. In fact, Andy and Susan came to see us play in California. When we were on tour, but I came back and so then I went over to play on Rajaz, and but before that I'd sent Andy as a present a book which I'd written a chapter for about Indonesian music because I'd been getting involved in Indonesian music. But I sent him a book called The Rough Guide to World Music. It's quite a big tome, and he was reading the chapter about Arabic music, and read about the rhythm of certain the rhythm of the camel hooves. That there's a style of music that is based upon. It's very nomadic. So it's like something that would have developed out of caravans and herders and camel herders and things like that. And the rhythm of the camel's hooves is called rajaz. So he immediately thought, oh, well, that's interesting, and sort of started to listen to some of the things that are recommended in the book. And yeah, so that's how that came about.
do you think it rubbed off on the music he was writing for this record as well? Was it more of a
Yeah, a
Arabic
little bit.
vibe, a little bit?
In Rajaz, for sure. Rajaz itself and the title track. And yeah, lyrically, yes. I mean, there's very nice lyrics to that song.
So,
And yeah,
so are those the standout tracks for you on this particular one?
yeah. There were Lawrence as well, I like, and Rajaz, yeah. Because, Andy was sort of like also reading about D.H. Lawrence, T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, and at the time, and he was sort of, some of those songs were kind of perhaps related to a project that he had in mind, but it's ended up an album of songs rather than a strict concept album. But that some of those tracks they do sort of slot together in a kind of a concept.
Sure.
So, that's the way it goes. That's
Yeah.
showbiz.
So we're down to one album, and
Yeah, Nod and a Wink, and then
I
that
find
was
it hard to believe it's going on 20 years since this came out. I
yeah.
remember seeing you at Nearfest performing
Ah,
for this particular one with your special keyboard player that learned everything in a week, Tom Brislin.
Tom Brislin. He stepped in when Guy had to. It wasn't him; it was his wife was ill, and he had to go. We had been rehearsing with Guy for some time, and all of a sudden, it was no question he had to go. He had to go home, and so somebody told us about Tom, and they got in touch with Tom, and he stepped in and did that tour that you saw.
Yeah, he's one of the brightest talents on the progressive music scene in the last 20 years, I think. You know,
Yeah, he did quite a good job. He did
yeah,
quite
everything he touches turns to gold. And, you know, he got a really good
a
gig
difficult
playing,
job, but
you know, he's playing with Kansas now.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
pretty,
I
pretty,
saw that. Yeah,
pretty
that's
steady
good.
gig to have. And
That's
he
good.
really pushed them up a level. I think they were really amazed when they got him. You know, he came in and
Yeah.
pretty much had everything down cold and played things that they hadn't heard anybody play in decades. You know, like like some of the keyboard, you know, the keyboard player, the original singer, Steve Walsh, kind of drifted a bit from what was originally on those records over the years, which happens when sometimes when you play these songs for decades, they tend to kind of veer away from the original form sometimes.
Definitely. But that's
But
what I was talking about with the early Camel stuff.
yeah, and I think just Tom's attention to detail stunned them. They were like, you know, we're hearing
Yeah.
things live that we haven't heard since the '70s. So,
Yeah, I mean, he got thrown in at the deep end with us because of the schedule, but he did really well. Yeah,
oh yeah, no,
he saved saved the cancellation of the tour. But you know that tour was ill-fated anyway.
true. Yeah, I recall there was a date down here in Atlanta that got canceled. I
It
can't.
got cancelled because the day before, when we were at the airport, we just loaded everything on, and Denny suddenly had a problem with his heart, as it turns out in the end, and he just fell over. He fell off of a stool in the cafe
Oh, that's awful.
at Washington airport. And next thing, we were supposed to be getting on the plane, but the next thing, is me and Andy sitting in an ambulance with Denny rushing off to hospital. And the tour manager then sort of rescheduling and sending everybody home, sending the crew home, uh, Tom home, and Andy and I ended up staying in Washington, sort of next to the hospital, sort of going in to see Denny and waiting for his family to arrive from Canada. And then I went back to California with Andy, feeling we were very dejected.
Oh, I can
That
imagine.
was it. The tour just. We were supposed to go to Atlanta, and we were supposed to go to Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm lucky that I drove 900 miles and caught you at Nearfest. And I have
Okay.
to admit, I attended that festival pretty much every year it happened, and seeing Camel was definitely my top five acts I've seen there.
Okay. Cool.
Well, for years I would kept talking to Rob, who runs it. And it's like, you got to get Camel. He's like, I love them. I want
Mr.
them.
La Duca. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob Leduca and Chad Hutchinson. Yeah, and they finally it happened. It was just like, oh, great. We can't wait to see them. You know. So yeah, it's definitely kind of an emotional moment. Just getting a chance to see you guys was it was. I'll never forget it. It was wonderful.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely, it was just the best. You know, Camel was one of the first prog bands I got into once I got kind of burnt out on the obvious people. You know, your Yeses and your ELPs and Genesis. I mean, you can only
Right.
listen to the same records so many times before you want something fresh.
Okay.
And you know, it's about really about 25 years ago now. A friend of mine sent me a copy of the Snow Goose, and I was just like, oh, I love this. What a wonderful group.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And it just kind of went from there, you know. But I am, you know, even now I think Camel, you know, I try to spread the gospel whenever I can because I just think they are very accessible. You know, for anybody that's a fan of the typical progressive rock, I think Camel is a good stepping stone. You know, um,
Why not? I mean, and he always sort of would be saying, progressive rock. It's basically it's just the stuff that Andy writes. So
yeah, you know, and
not
for
meant
some,
to be. It's not meant to be. It's not like, oh, this is progressive rock or something. It's just sort of it is what it is.
you know, it's just about, you know,
That's
about
I'm a fan.
imagination and pushing past typical commercial boundaries. You
Mm.
know, and I think, you know, Progressive rock
Yeah,
is
we were
kind of
good
a,
at that, pushing past commercial boundaries. Yeah, yes, that's right. Not making any money.
yeah, no commercial uh, concerns, you know. It's just like we're just going to write music from our hearts, and if it's successful, fine, and if not, that at least we know we followed our own path, and
Yeah,
you
I
know,
wonder whether that was really behind it all. Yeah, I think you might have something there.
yeah. And you know, for a lot of groups, the progressive tag is a bit of a prison in a way. It almost creates expectations that, you know, can
Well,
be
it means different things
binding.
to different people anyway. You know, you see
Yeah,
the endless arguments. You know, sort of, is this prog? You know,
I know, and
does this smell like prog to you? You
it's
know,
like,
and
well, and then people start acting like they can only
that's
listen
not
to
prog.
prog, and
Yeah.
you know, suddenly they're trying to, and it's almost like a bit of a snobbery in a way. It's like, you know, I'm only listening to progressive rock, and it's like, well, and there's all kinds of great music out there. You know, don't live with blinders on, even when it comes to progressive stuff. You know,
Well, I totally agree.
yeah, you know.
I
Next
totally
thing you know,
agree.
they're trying to say, oh, you know, so and so is prog, and it's like, no, they're not, but it's okay for you to like other things. Just get on with it. You know, you don't have to
Yeah, well,
qualify it. You know, there's a lot of nitpicking,
yeah,
but I
but
guess that's typical.
it's like that in all genres,
It
isn't it?
really is. It
So
really is. Yeah.
if people are really, really into a genre and they think that's it, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I don't want to criticize. I like a lot of prog, you know. So, but I like a lot of other things too, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well,
because
did you have
because
a chance to see any of those big groups back in the '70s? Yes,
oh
or
yeah,
ELP?
I used to go and see. Yes, used to have a residency at the Marquee
Oh yeah, the
once a
very
week.
first lineup, right?
The very first
Peter
line, Tony
Banks.
Kaye, Chris Squire, Bill Bruford, and Pete Banks,
Yeah,
and John
Pete
Anderson,
Banks,
of course.
great
Now,
underrated
I
guitar
used to
player.
go and see them quite often. They were one of my favorite bands. So that was the time, then they brought out the first album, the
Hmm.
Yes album. Not the Yes album, the one that just says Yes.
Right, the big bubble.
With the cover versions, you know, and they were playing a lot of cover versions, you know, and like on that first album, that beautiful version of Every Little Thing, the Beatles
Yeah,
song,
Beatles tune. Yeah,
and that Birds song,
Everydays.
and so really great and great harmonies, and it was clear then that Chris Squire was just like really totally unique bass player,
Oh
and Bill
yeah.
Bruford, and you know. It was just so good. I used to love going to see them, and yeah, and I love that first record. And I was there. It was the day after the moon landings,
Oh wow.
and I was
Okay.
at the Marquee, and the where I went to see Yes at the Marquee. I mean, listen, I'm what 16 years old with my little fringe jacket and my sort of orange hippie shirt and you know my it's going there with a shoulder bag with my little Panasonic cassette player, and I would record all this stuff.
Oh
Where
wow.
those cassettes are, I don't know. I wish I
Yeah.
knew because I got the Faces, I got the Taste, Rory Gallagher, I got Yes, I got you know all early cassettes just recorded sort of like surreptitiously in my hippie shoulder bag, sitting at the front.
But you really enjoyed listening to those.
Yeah, and you know they and after the day after the moon landing, I remember John Anderson saying, you know, hey, everybody see the moon landing last night? It was fantastic, you know. And then that's when they play. Sorry, John, I didn't. But you know, that's how I remember it. My
Right.
16-year-old brain, and so and then they played. They'd learned, I think, this America, Simon and Garfunkel, Paul
Oh
Simon
yeah,
song.
yeah. You know
They did
that.
a fantastic version of that.
Yeah,
That
you
was so
know,
beautiful.
they had a way of taking a cover tune and really making it their own. You
Oh,
know,
they would
turning
run with it. Yeah.
inside. I mean, America. I played it for Crosby. I mean, excuse me. I played it for Paul Simon fans before, and they don't even know what song it is until the lyrics come in. It's such a
Yeah.
unique arrangement,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's lovely.
I think America may be their greatest cover they did. I mean, they did so many great ones, but there's just, it's like a 10-minute epic
Yeah, yeah.
almost, and kind of a.
I really like that. That was a really good time. I was yeah. So I enjoyed that. I kind of because there's the thing is there was so much music going on in those days that. And especially where you could go and see it. I mean, I saw Jimi Hendrix play. I saw Vanilla Fudge and The Who on the same bill.
Wow.
At the Savile Theatre, and yeah, there was just so many and bands like that, bills like that. Sort of more than one band or all nighters at the Lyceum with
Sure.
with Arthur Brown, with The Who, the Steppenwolf, all kinds of bands like that. So I saw all them. I saw Hendrix a few times.
Did you ever run across Gentle Giant?
Funnily enough, with my first band, Crisis, we actually supported Simon Dupree and the Big Sound.
Sure. Okay.
Again at the Kettering Tin Hat Club. We played there a few times as a support band. And that one time with Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. And that was the brothers. And
Shulman
they
Brothers.
just had a hit with this lovely little, actually sort of Indonesian melody, this pentatonic thing, Kites.
Yeah.
Lovely that. And so that's it. And yeah, no. Otherwise,
Okay.
I didn't see Gentle Giant.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Great
Well,
band, of course.
oh yeah, absolutely. One of a kind. So back to A Nod and the Wink. Any memories of recording this one and any favorite tracks?
Had a lot of fun doing Squiggly Fair,
That's a fun one.
and of course the big sad number at the end is I don't know. That's kind of that's a heavy one. That
Yeah. I thought Fox Hill was a
for today,
standout on
for
this.
today. Fox Hill is great. Andy sang it on the record, and he claims to have written it for me to sing, but he sang it on the record. I had to sing it live,
Yeah, I remember.
which
Yeah.
was kind of interesting. So it took me a while to get the bass playing and the singing at the same time.
I
But
think the one you're talking about at the end is For Today.
for today, yeah,
Yeah. Beautiful.
yeah, it's very sad.
So,
And yeah,
do you think there could, have you guys ever worked on any music since that album that's original, fresh?
yeah,
Yeah.
there's been some sort of toing and froing of ideas and things, and Andy has sent me a lot of stuff that he's working on, and yeah, and I tell him it's great,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you
keep
think
going.
there could be a
Next,
follow-up eventually?
well, I hope so, but what do I know?
Right.
As I said, I told you,
Yeah,
I never
it's
put myself
Andy's
forward
call
as
to
a
make.
spokesperson. I can tell you, I can reminisce about things, but it's really up to them what they do next. And I think everybody, we're all just holding our breath,
Sure. All right.
waiting to see what happens, because it's really sad. I'm sure that we would have been going out on tour next year, but at the moment it's on hold. Um, so because everything is on hold, the world is on hold.
It is. I think.
So what can you do? And who knows how it's going to sort of reform, regroup. How is everything going to regroup? And I feel really, it's like Camel is a sort of, when we've been touring the last decades of touring, since the early 90s, we've really tried to work with mostly the same crew people and technicians, and it's a big family, which
Sure.
is really makes it so much fun on the road. And yeah, so, and these people to us are just as important, and and they also work. These are the kind of guys who are out there working, with lots of different people. They're out on tour all the time. God knows how they keep their families together, but they're always out on the road. Front of house guys, stage tech, lighting, all this. They rely on working all the time,
Sure.
being on tour with whoever. And usually we're lucky to sort of get them to commit, enough in advance that say, we're going out, and they love to do it, which is great. So, but they're all out of work at the moment.
Yeah, it's awful.
Everybody's out of work.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed
This is tragic.
blows over in the next year.
It's not just musicians, maybe you can still put something out and have some minuscule royalties online or something, or people are still buying your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the technicians, the tour managers, the drivers, the hire companies for the gear, the PA, everything. Everybody's out of work.
Absolutely. Well, fingers crossed things turn around soon.
Oh well, of course.
This vaccine is the answer.
Fingers crossed everywhere.
Yeah, cross everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few questions in the chat room I wanted to run by you real quick.
Okay.
Ask Colin if he's going to get to do anything else with anyone from the extended 3 Mustaphas family tree.
I don't know. I'm still, I'm still very close to the surviving members, and we still, talk a lot. And I had a couple of them on my Wild End album, and but no, I don't know. Everybody's doing sort of their own things,
Okay.
and I'm really concentrating. I'm at the moment working on another project with my friend Daniel Biro. We just put out an album earlier this year called Still, which if you go to Bandcamp, you can listen to it. It's on all the usual, Spotify's and all that.
Okay, yeah, I had heard something about
those
that.
people who don't pay you anything.
Yes.
But
Half a
Bandcamp is
penny.
great.
Yeah.
If
All
you
right,
want-
folks, look that up on Bandcamp.
Yeah, Still. Colin Bass and Daniel Biro. It's on my Bandcamp page, colinbass.bandcamp.com.
All right. I got another question.
That's really nice because I'm playing a lot of fretless on that, and doing all the vocals and some piano, and Daniel plays keyboards, and he's very talented. Half the songs are mine, half the songs are his, and we're currently working on another project.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So another album's worth of music, or a different
Another
project?
album's worth of music. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's good with a slightly different direction for this one,
Okay. Very good.
which I can't divulge at the
I got a
moment.
question. My friend CJ is a bass player as well, and he's
Yeah.
wondering, my big question would be, how on earth were walls so accessible at the time? Nowadays, they're roughly 20 grand, and it takes a 3-year wait list.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
3 years is it now? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, yeah.
Were they a little more reasonably priced back in the day before they became a big name?
When
or-
I got mine, it was new. It
Mhm.
was, they were still. I went to the factory to see Ian Waller and Pete Fish, and yeah, they were just getting it going. My wall is number 117 or
Oh,
something
wow.
like that.
Okay.
So this one, the black one, and the other one's 119. I wonder whatever happened to 118. Yeah, so it was new basically. It was at the beginning of when they were suddenly gaining a reputation.
Well, he's also wondering, did you actually have to buy it, or did they gift it
Oh,
to
I
you?
bought it.
Yeah,
£400 each.
Okay. Not
Not
bad at all.
bad.
Yeah, not bad. Paul McCartney also played a wall there for a little while,
He did.
I think.
Yeah.
That's pretty popular. Okay, before we go, I wanted to talk a bit about your alter ego and how you've written a standard that's pretty big over in Asian countries.
Well, it's in Indonesia, basically.
Indonesia, yes,
It's been
yes.
covered by artists in Hong Kong and Japan, but it's never been quite the big success that, unfortunately, because the royalties would be much better from those two countries. But in Indonesia, it was at the time in 1994, it was a bit like the Wild West, you know. So a Wild East, Wild Southeast. But it made me a lot of friends, you know, and yeah, I mean, it's under the name Sabah Abbas Mustafa because that was my name in the Three Mustafas Three,
Right.
and I'd done some session work for a Japanese with the three of the Mustafas. We'd done session work for a Japanese record company called Wave Records, and for an Okinawan band called the Rinken Band, and that was recorded in London. And then after that, I sort of I was starting to go to Indonesia a lot on holiday, and then I ended up in Jakarta, and I was sort of, yeah, Ben from the Mustaphas was asking me to license some music, some Indonesian music, so you could put it out on Globestyle Records.
Okay.
And so I just went to a cassette shop and listened to stuff because everything was cassettes in those days, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and picked out some things and find out who made them and just looked them up in the phone book and rang them up, you know, and sort of said, you know, well, I'm looking for this and so. And so I went to a place in where was it called? M Block somewhere in Jakarta, where there were lots of these kind of like warehouses and offices of the Indonesian cassette industry. And I went to a couple of them, and I did a couple of deals, license deals, to, you know, get the master to take back. And one of the guys I was talking to there said, "Hey, you're a musician. You should play in my studio. You know, do something. You know." So that was it, and I quickly wrote a song overnight to go into the studio, which was Denpasar Moon, and it was sort of like, I don't know, it came from the gods, you know. It's sort of
Those are the best ones.
and yeah, and basically for me, I just wanted to sort of blend a couple of Indonesian styles, Gong and Dangdut, which is sort of like the street music, and also kind of like I thought I'm using a different name so I wanted to be a crooner like Engelbert Humperdinck or something,
Yeah,
you
I
know? So I
totally
thought
see
I'll
that.
mix that up with that, just for fun. It was just for fun. But the guy fixed me up with some local musicians who were brilliant players. The bamboo flute player and the tabla player they were the top session men, and a keyboard player who was the arranger. And we did a couple of demos, a Denpasar Moon, another one called Barley Girl that I wrote, and yeah, and then he didn't know what the record company guy didn't know what to do with it, so he was sitting there. But I came away with a cassette of 2 songs.
Hmm.
Camel went on tour to Japan shortly after that, 92, 91, 92, I think. And while I was there, I hooked up with the guy I'd done a session for in London, a Wave Records, and said, you know, hey, listen to this, you know, I'd like to make an album like this in Jakarta. How about it? Because I knew they were doing some Indonesian productions with my friend Makoto Kubota, who's a brilliant producer. And yeah, so they said, leave it with us, leave it with us. So I left the cassette, and then when I got back from the Camel tour, you know, there was a fax coming out saying, hey, a guy at Sony, Wave was a subsidiary of Sony, the guy at Sony has heard your song, he really likes it, thinks it could be a hit. So we'll make your album real soon in Jakarta. So, you know, I got in touch and we did a deal, and I went off to Jakarta thinking, hey, we're going to have a hit. Great. I didn't realize that while I was in Jakarta, they were recording it with somebody else. They were recording the song in Tokyo with a young lady from the Philippines. And anyway, this is an awfully long story. It's terrible. But, you know, basically about a year later, they released it in Indonesia. And it was the soundtrack to an advert on TV in Indonesia for Sony Hi-Fis.
Oh, okay.
It's like a 30-second bit of the song with Mary Beth at the end going, "It's a Sony." And you know, through a Balinese temple, and then you see the ghetto blaster, and that's what they were they were selling, you know.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, it just took off. You know, it suddenly became, there was a demand for it, and yeah, I got a phone call New Year's Eve, 1994. You know, for three, no, four, can't remember, from a friend of mine who lived in Jakarta, saying, you know, hey, your song is everywhere. And I thought, that's funny. Nobody told me. It was a massive hit, you know. So I sort of went over there and found out, yes. And Sony Japan sort of went, oh, sorry. I said,
Yeah.
you know, yeah,
So you think having it in the commercial was what really got it
yeah, yeah,
exposed?
yeah. So later on, that song, it's been covered. I've got about 50 different cassettes with versions of it,
I
you know,
was going to
like
say,
kids
yeah.
singing it, famous Javanese singers singing it, you know, all slightly different regional styles, but somehow people still know it, you know. If I meet Indonesian people, I oh yeah, my dad used to like that song, you know, or something like that.
And then you put it on your own album, Outcast of the Islands,
Couple
as
of
well,
times.
right?
Yeah, I did an album with the album that I recorded in Jakarta came out. I put out, and also Piranha Records put it out in Europe, and it came out on Sony. Didn't do anything, but yeah. So, but then I recorded it on Outcast of the Islands too, because I thought, well, can't keep a good song down. Nobody's really heard it before, so
Does that in any way feel like a lost Camel album to you?
Outcast.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I was writing the album for a Camel audience.
Mm-hmm.
I get, you know, that helped me focus on that, and Andy kindly played on it. I went over to California. I mean, I recorded the album in Poland, and then after a couple of weeks, I flew over to California with two 24-track tapes, you know, and Andy put his guitar parts on, and I went back to Poland and finished it off and mixed it, you know, and yeah, that was good. But I was kind of, so there were songs in there that I was leaving space for him to do something. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't know. You know, it's just kind of like it was me. I don't know. I don't know where that's the thing. It's like Denpasar Moon. I don't know where these things come from. You know, you just get a thread, you get inspired, and you go. And at the end of it, you know, like Outcast, if I listen to it, then I go, how did I do that?
sure. Yeah.
I don't know how I did
You're
that.
like a conduit to,
It's
some,
this is the word.
yeah,
This is the word.
something from beyond coming through
Yeah,
you. Yeah. That's great.
you're just a vessel.
Well, before we go, I was wondering if there's anything you'd like to share
Yeah,
with
I'd like
our
to have my dinner
audience.
now. Eh?
I was wondering if there's anything you wanted to share with our audience before we wrap it up.
Love, health, and happiness
Sounds good to me.
to you all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Same to you, Colin. I hope your days are bright and the future is looking up.
The future is coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I feel like I know a lot more about you, and it was a real pleasure.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. It was nice to meet you, and thanks anybody who was out there for listening.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, I will be back next week. I'm chatting with Nectar.
Good Lord.
You remember them,
Nectar.
don't you?
Well, I
Yeah.
do because I knew Roy Albrighton, who's also sadly passed away.
Yes.
And funnily enough, in London, when I was just at the beginning of Clancy, I actually sort of, I think it might have been Roy himself, came round and they were looking for a bass player. I nearly joined Nectar in the
Oh,
early
that's
days.
wild. Very cool.
Uh, but I didn't. I didn't. And, so so there's
It's a
another,
small world.
you know, as we say, one door closes, another one slams shut.
Yeah. Well, keep
So,
passing open windows. That's what they say. All
okay.
righty, Colin. Well, best of luck to you, and thank you so much. And I'll send you a copy of this if you could share it. I'd be very grateful.
Of course.
Camel fans will get a kick out of it. All righty then. Well,
Okay.
take care. We'll be back next week with Nectar, and beyond that, you just never know who may pop up.
Yeah.
All righty then. All right. All
Okay.
the best
Bye
to you.
bye.